Hello, I'm glad you're joining us in our study of birth order from a biblical perspective. Today we're talking about the baby, the lastborn, the only one that can never be dethroned by having another one come along behind them. Now, the logic behind birth order is if the way parents treat their children affects the way they turn out, and if parents treat their children differently depending on where they fall in the birth order, then your birth position does affect your personality. And that's why a brother and a sister can grow up in the same family. But yet, as they talk about childhood memories, they would have each seen it from a different perspective. And that you perceive reality, the way you perceive it really does affect how you feel about yourself and how you feel about others. Well, today we're talking about the lastborn. We often hear about parents' pride and joy. Well, their pride is usually the firstborn, but their joy comes in the lastborn. Lastborn tends to be the easiest to find when we talk about birth order because they all generally fit into one major category with a few differences going either this way or that way, but they're pretty much the same. Today we're going to be looking at three well-known lastborn, and that's Gideon and David and Moses, three Old Testament people. Gideon is found in the book of Judges in the Old Testament, chapters 6 through 8. When we first meet Gideon, he is an adult man by this time. Israel has been under bondage to Midian and the Amalekites and people from the east for 7 years when they show up. He's the youngest son of Joash. Now, his father was an idolater who worshipped the god Baal, and he sacrificed to him, which was common in that clan. One day, the angel of the Lord came and appeared under a tree in Joash's land. And Gideon, at this time, he was in a den in the winepress, threshing out wheat. Here he is hiding because he wants to protect what he has from the Midianites. He comes out and sees the angel, and the angel says, "O thou mighty man of valor." Let me tell you, the lastborns are real suckers for praise and encouragement. That got his attention the way it would not any other sibling, because they like to be looked up to. And so he tells him that the Lord's going to deliver them. And Gideon says, wait a minute. If God is really with us, then tell me why all this has happened. All my life, I have been hearing about what God did and how he delivered Israel, but I haven't seen any of it. Well, most lastborns have only heard about God's deliverance, about his power from their older siblings or parents or maybe teachers in Sunday school. They have to have a face-to-face encounter. They have no experience with God and who he is and what he really can do. And when the angel said, "Go in the might of yours, and you shall save Israel from the hands of the Midianites," he says, "Oh my Lord, how can I save Israel? I am the youngest in my family, and we're the least one in the whole tribe of Manasseh." You see, the lastborns are not generally the ones that people go and pick out to ask them to do great things. They go to their firstborns. They go to the older people. And then he says, all right, Lord, if this is really you, give me a sign. Let me know that it's you. And so he prepared a sacrifice. And when he did, he put the meat and the bread on top of a rock, and that sacrifice was touched with the edge of the staff, and fire came up from the rock and consumed it. Gideon was scared. He said, I know I have now seen God face to face. But the angel said, "Peace be with you. Don't be afraid. You're not going to die like you think you might." And so Gideon built an altar there and called it "The Lord is Peace." The firstborn, probably more than any other birth order, need to be awestruck with the presence and the holiness and the greatness of who God is. They spend their life trying to be better, better, better. And they've got to know that there's someone they cannot be better than. They have to know that there is someone that they can never, no matter how much they try, they can never, ever supersede this one. And they have to recognize their own sinfulness, that they'll never be good enough, strong enough, no matter what they do. That's the way that was with Moses, as we'll see later. God wants you, if you're the lastborn, to know that he's greater than anything you can ever imagine or do. And he loves you, he accepts you, and he wants to do great things with and through you. So then the Lord told him, he says, all right, your dad's an idol worshiper. I want you to tear down his idols to Baal. I want you to destroy them and go and tear down the images and offer a sacrifice right there. Well, Gideon, he's the lastborn. He does it, but he gets 10 guys to go with him, 10 of his servants, and he does it by night. But he does it. You see, the last-born children are the least likely to follow tradition. They don't care about what their mom and dad have done. They want to know what's going to happen right now. They want to know how it's going to affect them. And so when the morning revealed his work and the wrath of the people in town, what happened? His dad stood up for him. And that's what lastborns expect to have happen. They expect either their parents or someone else to stand up for them, to take their place. And that's what happened then. He expected, I can do this, but if I get in trouble, someone else will solve my problems. Well, Gideon knew that he was called. And God says, all right, I want you to go and fight the enemy down in the valley of Jezreel. Gideon called together an army, 32,000. He felt pretty confident that, well, with God and 32,000 men, he could do it. God said, this is too many, too many. He said, I want you to cut it down. He said, and so he cut it down to only 300, a ridiculously small amount. But you know what? That was not at all a problem to one who had been used to working with unfair odds all of his life. Unfair odds and limited resources. After all, Mom and Dad probably spend all the money on the firstborn child, and by the time it gets to the second and the third and even the baby, there's less and less to go around. Many times they end up with hand-me-downs and everything else. He was used to that, so he did it. And God gave him the victory. But before that, before they had the battle, God says, you might need a little more reassurance. If you do, I want you to go. And he heard a dream. He went to the enemy camp. And this Midianite had had a dream about how some barley loaf came down and destroyed the camp. And when it was interpreted by another enemy, he said, well, this is nothing but the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, an Israelite man, and he is going to destroy us. And when Gideon heard this, he was excited. He had all he needed. You see, an older child would have needed more assurance. They would have had to check out the credentials of the person having the dreams, not the baby. They can believe other people because they strive so hard to believe him. Well, what about David? David was a shepherd before he was a king. He took care of the sheep. You know, that's one thing about the lastborn or the baby of the family. They love pets because they want someone or something that they can take care of and tell what to do. Samuel shows up in town and he wants to anoint the next king. And he finds Jesse and it tells him, he says, go get me all your sons. Well, Jesse does, all except the shepherd, who is the lastborn out in the fields. No one expects the lastborn to be given honor above the firstborn, but that's what happened. Later on, we see David playing the harp for King Saul. And oftentimes, the lastborn child will be talented in arts, music, anything that will get them in front of people. They are very good, oftentimes, with music. Then Israel is at war with the Philistines, and David is sent to take food to his brothers, older brothers. And that was all well and good because it's what he should have done, except when he gets there, he goes about, when he hears that ever who kills the giant, the king's going to give him his daughter and there won't be any taxes. He loved that. And he just kept going from place to place to place to find out, is this really true? Is this really true? Is this what's going to happen? You see, the lastborn want to be part of the action, and they will often face anger from their siblings because they're trying to steal the show. Sibling rivalry cannot be prevented. I mean, it's a natural part of life. Siblings spend approximately 33% of their time, free time with one another, and that's been proven by research. And then he decides that he's going to take the leap. He is going to face Goliath, that giant. And, desire for attention makes them do things that would cause other people just to run the other way for cover. But size, 9 foot to his maybe 5 feet or so, that didn't bother David at all because, hey, he's the lastborn. He's the littlest of the family. He is used to being the shortest. So that didn't matter. And he's always had siblings who are bigger and badder than he is. Their main motivation in life is to show that I really matter. And they grow up with an attitude of, I'll show them. But they're also optimists because they expect good to come out of the situation. Well, then he kills Goliath and does what no other birth order would do. He takes the sword after he's already killed him, cuts off his head, picks up that head, and goes walking back to camp carrying the bloody head of Goliath. Yeah, I mean, they're showmen. They want attention. They'll do whatever they can. These are the ones, you go to the wedding, everyone's throwing rice, and there's a little baby throwing gravel. They can't compete in many ways, so they drive the older siblings crazy by getting attention any way they can. Well, Saul accepts him. And he brings him to his family, and he becomes a warrior, going out, killing many Philistines, and all is well and great until Saul hears a song. Saul has slain his thousands, David his tens of thousands. The women love David. He attracts people like honey. I mean, that's just the way the lastborns are. They're spontaneous, they're lovable, and they're loved. And so they see that. Then, later on, I mean, they don't just attract people that they want around them. David gets in trouble. And he ends up running from King David, and he ends up in the cave of Adullam. And when his family hear about it, they all come to him. But not only those, it says everyone who is in distress, everyone who is in debt, everyone who is discontented, they gathered to him. So he became leader of 400 men. Well, to a lastborn, once they get in trouble, they want friends still. And sometimes the best way for them to soothe their conscience is by surrounding themselves with other losers, other people that they are better than. It makes them feel better about themselves when lower achievers run with them. And so that's why so often you'll see the lastborn or the baby of the family running with what we might call the wild crowd or the wrong people, just because they want to feel better than someone, and that makes them feel better. Well, probably we all know about David and Bathsheba. David already had the wives and the children. The babies are known for their big families sometimes, but morality is often an issue. They live undisciplined lives in many areas, but morality becomes a real problem because they love everybody and everybody loves them. And so they have a very hard time with delayed gratification. And that sin right there caused David a lot of problems. Well, let's quickly look at the life of Moses. Moses, we don't often think about him as being the baby of the family, but when he was born, Pharaoh had already decided all the babies are going to be killed. His mother put him in an ark that she had made and sent him down the river when he was 3 months old. She kept him hid as long as she could because she loved her child. This is her lastborn. This is her baby. And says he was beautiful. Yeah, most lastborn babies, they have the ability to look young and cute all of their life. Remember Dick Clark, America's oldest living teenager? Yeah, that's the kind of face they just have. Well, she puts him in the river, praying that the Lord will help him. And she sends him down, and there's Pharaoh's daughter out walking, and she sees him. And she takes him out, and she looks at him. When she does, he starts to cry. 3 months old, he already knows how to get attention. His mama, I know, for 3 months, had been telling him, "Shh, Moses, don't cry. Moses, don't cry." Now, if Moses had been a firstborn, he would have said, "Yes, ma'am." If he'd been the middle child, he would have said, "I won't. I don't want to get any attention." If he'd been the second-born, he would have said, "I'll cry if I want to cry." If he'd been the only child, he would have said, "Oh, I don't see anyone else crying. They don't really want to stand out." But he's the baby. Crying gets him attention, and he's learned that by age 3 months. Marion, his older sister, had been keeping an eye out of, seeing what was going to happen. They depend on older siblings to watch out for them. And she comes and says, can I go and get one of the Hebrew ladies to take care of him? Pharaoh's daughter sends her. She comes back with his mother. His mother raises him until he is through nursing, and a while later, and I'm sure through potty training and all the difficult, terrible stuff. And she takes him when he's older to Pharaoh's daughter, who then adopts him. And so because he's adopted, now he's in a blended family, he is a lastborn who now becomes an only child. And we'll see a little bit of that with Moses, but he never loses those lastborn qualities, and he never forgets his heritage. A child, regardless of how young they are when they're removed from their families, will always remember their heritage. And that's why, as he's grown, he's out walking and he sees an Egyptian beating one of his Hebrew brothers. He looks around, doesn't see anyone. He kills the Hebrew and buries him in the sand. Not real great for Moses, our lawgiver and leader. The next day he goes out and he sees 2 Hebrews fighting. He tries to stop the fight, and one of them says, "Who made you our judge and lawgiver? And are you going to kill us the way you did the Egyptian?" Moses knows he's about to be found out, and he's scared. And then Pharaoh really does hear about it. And so Moses takes off. He runs to the land of Midian. And while he's there, he lives with Jethro, who is the priest of Midian, and marries his daughter. One day Moses is out taking care of the sheep. And while he's there, God speaks to him from a burning bush. You see, he's out taking care of the sheep on the backside of the mountain because they work well alone. They want their own space. They want to work at their own pace. They do not like being told what to do. And so it's much easier to be their own boss. Well, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a burning bush. And the bush was burning but not consumed. And Moses said, well, let me see what's going on here. And, that's the lastborn. They have curiosity, and they're unafraid to try new things. They weren't going to call for help to find out about. No, they want to get in the midst of it and see for themselves what's going on. God called from the midst of the bush and told Moses, he said, take off your sandals, Moses. This is holy ground. He says, I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he also said, I have seen what's happening to my people in bondage, and I have come down to deliver them, and I am going to send you to Pharaoh. Well, Moses said, no, wait a minute, God. Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out? You see, sometimes the youngest can be too cautious just because all of their life they've been told, no, you can't do this, you got to be careful, let your big brother do it, let your big sister do it. But he was cautious, and he, for once, he wanted more advice. And so God gives him more advice, and more information. And he tells them, this is what's going to happen. And so then Moses says, indeed, when I come to the children of Israel, the lastborn, they are the most likely to support radical new theories. They're the ones that everybody else has believed this tradition for a long time. He said, wait a minute, this is something new, and I'm going to go in a different direction, just like Gideon did. And then, he said, what if they want to know who sent me? What should I say? And God said, you say that I am sent you. That's all you have to say. And gather them together and tell them that I, the God of their fathers, is going to bring you out. And Moses says, but what if they say, suppose they don't believe me, what if they say God has not sent you? You see, here he is. He had just asked God, what if? God explained the situation. And then he again asked God himself, what if again? Babies, the lastborn, they are the ones that would even seek expert advice and not believe the research because it doesn't go along with what they're thinking. They're the ones that once they get their mind made up, you can't argue with them. You might as well just let them do what they're going to do, and you just go your way because they're not going to listen to any of your arguments. And so God says, okay, I'm going to give you a sign. And he says, put your hand in your coat and bring it back out. When he did, it was leprous. Put it back in, bring it back out, and it was clean. Oh my, the lastborns love surprises. And don't you know that was a surprise? God will often use surprises when he speaks to the firstborn. They're the ones that he'll often show signs to and dreams to. And in this case, he's even carrying on a dialogue like he did with Gideon. They love conversations. And so God will use them to do surprising things, and he will himself surprise them in how he speaks to them. Well, then he's still not sure. And he says, but God, I know, God, I don't know how to speak. Even before you called me, right now, I've just never been able to speak. He was raised in Pharaoh's house. He knew how to speak. But these are the ones that are manipulative, and they will have strange ailments. The day of the test, the day of the job interview, whatever. When they don't want to do something, they're going to come up with an excuse. And then he's, well, God, just please, just send somebody else. They don't want responsibilities. But he does go to Pharaoh. And when he goes to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's, no, you're not leaving, you're not taking them out. And he stays there throughout the 10 plagues. Once they get an idea, once they're sold on an idea, they're going to follow through no matter how hard it is. You know, when the first plagues fell, even the Israelites experienced them. Everything was hard, but Moses had made up his mind. He was not going to give up regardless. On Mount Sinai, there's the 10 Commandments. Now, God says, I want you to take 2 tablets of stone, go up the mountain, and I'm going to write down the 10 Commandments. Well, why did he write them down? So the lastborn wouldn't forget. The baby is the one that forgets everything, forgets the instructions. You know, sometimes they're a little absent-minded. Also, if they're written down, people will believe them. The lastborn have a habit of sometimes embellishing stories and make even what's the truth a little bit unbelievable just because of the way they present it. God said, no, we've got this in writing. This is just the way it is. And he said, Moses, there are 10 of these commandments, not 11, not 9. You can't forget, you can't add. Moses comes down the mountain. He sees the people with Aaron worshiping the idol. What does he do with those 10 commandments that God wrote on? He takes them and broke them right there. Yeah, they tend to be impetuous and brash. They do things without thinking. They'll think about the consequences later, but right now, let's get this done. And they have a problem keeping up with things and even protecting their things sometimes, thinking, well, you know, if I lose it, if I break it, I'll get, you know, somebody will give me something else. And sure enough, wouldn't you know? God says, okay, Moses, let's get some more stones. Let's go back up the mountain. I'll write on them again for you. Typical lastborn child being taken care of. But you know, when you think about the law, and I don't know about you, but sometimes it's a little hard for me to read through Leviticus and Numbers and read all of the law that's written there and everything. The lastborn, they're known for being the poorest readers. They're known for not liking all of that detail. And, you know, they're not always reliable. And they don't like being told what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. But this right here shows us, just because you're a lastborn, you do not have to live up to a stereotype. Maybe you've heard about being the firstborn, the secondborn, the middle child, and you've been dwelling on all of the negative things. Just know that you can overcome any of those. Why? Because God is with you. And He, the one who is in you, the one who created you, will help you to strengthen all of your weaknesses. And if you have strong points, He will help you to make your strong points stronger. God created you. He knew what birth order to give you, and He wants to make you the best you can be with His help. Well, next week we'll talk about the only child.